We keep hearing about the need for AIDS education, education in the schools, education in the workplace. But somebody has to teach. Where do people turn to when they want the facts? Find out today on AIDS Vision. Hi, welcome to AIDS Vision. I'm your volunteer host, Allison Arngrim. And today on AIDS Vision, we're going to be talking about AIDS Project Los Angeles Education and Community Outreach Program. And with me today are Edward Paulo, who is the Speakers Bureau and Health Fair Coordinator, and Glenn Gaylord, who is a volunteer speaker for the Bureau. Welcome to AIDS Vision.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Edward, you actually coordinate the whole Speakers Bureau and Health Fair program for the project. What exactly constitutes the program? What is it based on?
Well, the Speakers Bureau consists of different type of presentations. We do what we call an AIDS 101 presentation, which is a basic general information about AIDS presentation type thing. Runs for about 45 minutes, and we usually allow for like 15 minutes of questions. We also have a panel presentation, which consists of people who are actually living with HIV or have AIDS that will sit on panels and answer questions from their audience about what it's like to live with HIV. We can also do a combination of those two, where somebody will come in and do an AIDS 101, and the person with HIV or AIDS can add their personal testimony to that presentation, which makes it quite effective.
So you actually have several different sort of packages that are available to people. What do people usually expect? People talk about having an AIDS speaker come in, and what is it they actually want?
They actually want somebody who, a lot of the places we go to need a lot of education to begin with. You know, they just heard about it. I mean, not about AIDS, but have just heard that we can do this for them and stuff, you know, so they'll call. And they actually want to see somebody who fits into that stereotype of a regular gay male with, you know, all the stereotype characteristics and stuff like that, who will actually come in and talk to them, and they can ask them questions and stuff like that.
So very often your job, as opposed to education, is breaking down stereotypes.
Oh, exactly. I do that all the time. I had somebody call and request a speaker to come in the other day, and they said, but I want them to focus on the innocent victims of AIDS.
As opposed to...
Exactly. I mean, we get all types of requests, you just don't know.
Well, that must be difficult. So you have an added burden. Instead of just a simple educational format of question and answer, you're actually having to counsel people and deal with their fears and their prejudices.
Oh, exactly. And our speakers are pretty well trained on how to handle those situations once they get to the place. They all have attended a 5-week intensive class, which deals with every issue regarding HIV and AIDS, and we try to prepare them as best as we can to be able to answer any type of questions or to deal with prejudice and multicultural issues and stuff like that.
So you really need to be able to talk to absolutely anybody.
Oh, exactly. We prefer that people have public speaking skills when they come into the Speakers Bureau, but we actually train anybody that is suitable in all the different skills and fits our program and stuff.
Now, you talk about breaking down stereotypes. What kind of people are in the Speakers Bureau?
We have all types. We have a 17-year-old girl ranging all the way to a 64-year-old retired nurse. and in between there's black, white, Spanish-speaking, English-speaking, gay males, straight females. We have all types.
So someone can be
HIV
targeted.
positive people, HIV negative people. It's a wide variety.
So you could get anything. Now
Right.
Glenn, you speak for the Bureau on a volunteer basis.
Yes.
What kind of a pitch do you, what do you typically get asked? What do you talk about when you go somewhere to speak on AIDS? What do you tell them?
Primarily, we focus first on the basics of AIDS. We talk about the 4 main fluids that can transmit the virus, being blood, semen, vaginal secretions, and breast milk. And often we try to challenge them initially just with that information, because a lot of people have concerns about saliva or tears or sweat. And so that usually puts a lot of people at ease right away, just knowing that you can put it, in a little box there with 4 fluids. And we talk about the history of HIV and the difference between HIV and AIDS, and how you can get it, how you can't get it. Let's try to clear up a lot of the misconceptions. If we're talking to teenage groups, we talk about why teenagers are particularly at risk. Why, during those years when they're teens, they might want to experiment, and they might be in denial or think that nothing's going to happen to them. So we go through that, and if there's time, sometimes we'll talk about proper condom use, or might demonstrate it, but it's not traditionally done in the first basic presentation.
Do you find most teenagers are in denial?
It varies. I really find that I think a lot of times we're told that, and to go into a teenage group and assume that, or look at them as being in denial. But I'm finding more and more that teens have been around AIDS for so long, since they were little kids. A teenager today has been hearing about it for a long, long time, and I find that they're not so much in denial, that they're actually kind of fearful about growing up and having sex, and that they are really concerned about their own mortality.
I don't think most people really know that. I think a lot of people see it from more the adult perspective. Would you say that going an audience from children to teenagers to adults, who are the most difficult audience to reach of that group?
College students.
College students. College students are the hardest.
Easily, yeah.
Do you have any idea why that is?
I think that, oftentimes high school students, they're either, they're very open to the information, and a lot of them have not experimented sexually, and so they want to hear this information. A lot of times they're hearing about this for the first time. College students oftentimes are sexually active by the time you reach them. A lot of them might be set in their ways, or they might have other concerns or agenda, another agenda that they're bringing to the discussion. They might be concerned, say, about cancer, and they might be wondering, why are you talking about only AIDS, or things like that. They oftentimes just have this, tend to intellectualize more, not to, knock college students. I was one myself, but, it seems to be a tougher crowd. They sometimes tend to analyze me while I'm speaking, instead of just taking the information.
How do you get through that? What do you do to get through an audience that you feel isn't, they're not really getting the information, they're so set in their beliefs? How do you break through that?
I try to find some sort of common ground. I try to find a link, maybe beforehand. Before I get there, I'll try to do as much research as possible on the group. But oftentimes you can just get them with just something funny, a humorous anecdote, anything to get through to them. Particularly, I had this one college class where had a fairly hostile guy in the back row nodding and shaking his head the whole time, and he raised his hand and he said, what's all the fuss about AIDS? I lost my mother to cancer, and why, why are we just talking about this? Why is this getting all the attention? And I told him, AIDS pushes a lot of buttons, you're talking about issues of sex and IV drug use, and it really does get a lot of people riled up, and I can understand, you're always jockeying for positions in the press for the different diseases. And he said, well, you wouldn't know the first thing about cancer. I lost my mother to cancer, and you wouldn't know anything about that. And so I found a common ground, and I said, well, as a matter of fact, I lost my own mother to cancer, so I can sympathize, and I think I know what you're going through. And talking about AIDS and the whole spectrum of diseases really got through to that particular person.
It must be tough trying to get people to really see AIDS as a disease. There's so much attached to it. One of the fears I know with a lot of people is having an AIDS speaker automatically conjures up pictures of sex, and there is an actual sex education AIDS workshop. And can you tell us about the difference between these two workshops, and when there is sex is brought up in a discussion, and when there are more non-sexual AIDS education situations?
Okay, well, basically the way we do it is we go into a school and do a basic AIDS 101. Sometimes we have to tailor some of the terms that are used in the presentation because of the parents and the teachers and stuff like that. They want to make sure that we're not going to say anything, you know, that deals too much with sex to the students. Then what we do is we try to coordinate a follow-up with the Speaking of Sex workshop, which is a 3-hour negotiation skills workshop, which Glenn can tell you more about since he's a facilitator for the program.
But people who sign up for the Speaking of Sex workshop are aware that they're getting a specifically sexually oriented workshop.
Right.
So when someone books an AIDS speaker, someone isn't just going to come in and start whipping out condoms. They're going to cover basic daily AIDS info. And then, so now, say someone has had this and they say, all right, we want the sex information. What do they get with Speaking of Sex?
What they get is, first we talk about the risk continuum of safer sexual activities. And we let people identify what they feel is safer, because not everybody is going to identify the same activities, and that's a real important issue to get across in a group, because if you're with another person, you can't automatically assume that they have the same guidelines as you do. And then we do a very detailed condom demonstration where we talk about latex barriers and condoms and water-based lubricants and non-oxidable 9 and the whole bit. And then we come up with excuses and responses to why somebody would want to use a condom or not use a condom, and try to role play with the participants in the workshop and get them in the heat of the moment and try to get them to respond quickly. If somebody's going to say, I'm not going to use that because condoms, they get in the way, they kill the sensation. And what's your response right now, because you might not have time when you're actually having sex. Then the second half of the workshop is very much a negotiation skills based time where we talk about how to negotiate safer sex, and we use a business model that's used in business negotiations, and we try to apply that to sexual situations and say, please, try to clarify what your intentions are first to yourself and then to your partner. And we talk about how important it is to be assertive and to go for what you want and to say what you want and to stick to that.
Is this successful? I mean, do you find that you are imparting this most of the time?
Yeah, absolutely. It's real successful. Again, in the high school situations, I'm finding it really does get through to students who never really thought that there was more than one basic sexual thing you could do. I mean, a lot of people seem real restricted to that, and they think, well, sex is just penetrative sex, and they might not have thought that there are other options. And that puts a lot of people at ease, and a lot of people feel, geez, I don't just have to do one thing. And that there are issues of intimacy and other things, and there's massage and hugging and things you can do without even having to use a condom. So it's pretty successful. People seem to appreciate it.
But I mean, it's obviously going out and speaking is you're developing a very personal relationship with these people, because it's everything from breaking down prejudice to actually talking about sex. Do you use your personal life? How do you connect with these people on a personal level?
I don't actually go out and do that much speaking myself because I'm too busy in the office coordinating all the speakers things. But I have done a couple of different presentations. Like we went out to Pasadena Middle School and spoke to like 900 kids, and they really needed my help, so I decided to do it with them. And I found that disclosing my own testimony about being HIV positive with the kids really brought them, like, it opened up their ears, like they wanted to listen, they wanted to hear what my story was like. Excuse me. And I've also gone to a couple of Latin schools who, the kids there were just wonderful. The minute I told them that, I was HIV positive and going through everything that I was going through living with this, they were just so sweet. I mean, this one little girl asked me if she could hug a person with HIV and AIDS and not get it and stuff. I said, of course you can. So at the end of the presentation, she came up to me and said, can I give you a hug? And I thought that was so touching. It was. So I find that sharing my own personal testimony with people brings them a little closer to me.
So they develop a bond.
Right.
We're going to go to a public service announcement right now. We'll be back in a moment.
Chance. Now we gotta take it. may never get to pass this way again.
We gotta be strong if we're gonna make it.
Now it's time to dry the tears. Through the ashes, hope appears. And if we reach out for the sky, we might touch the stars. Stand and be proud of who we are. We've come so close. We've come so far. Now and forever, our light will shine. Shout it out loud. Stand and be proud.
We have a dream. Now we've got to live it. It's gonna take some work to make this dream come true.
But this is our time. We can't waste this moment.
We're doing it with love and with help from God above. Nothing in this world can take it away. Stand and be proud of who we are. We've come so close. We've come so far. Now and forever, our light will shine. Shout it out loud. Stand and be proud. Close your eyes and feel the pride inside your heart. However long the road of life may be, this is the very best of you and me. Stand and be proud of who we are. We've come so close. We've come so far. Now and forever, our light will shine. Shout it out
And that was that anthem to rebuild Los Angeles, Stand and Be Proud by Voice of the City. I'm back with Edward Paulo and Glenn Gaylord from the Speakers Bureau. Edward, you were talking about actually telling an audience that you're HIV positive and the response of a girl actually wanting to hug you, to hug someone with HIV. do you also tell people your personal stories?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also living with HIV, and it really does add a lot to the presentation because before I actually give the presentation, I always ask the group, how many people know somebody living with HIV or AIDS? And
Do a lot of them say yes?
more and more now, yeah. The more I go out, the more hands that go up. And I say, well, for those who did not raise their hands, you're meeting one now for the first time. And it's a way of, first of all, doing justice to those who have gone before me and died, and allowing them the opportunity to, learn about this virus firsthand, from somebody standing right in front of them. It clears away a lot of the misconceptions right away. They see that, this is someone who's active and, looks like anybody else on the street. And, I always get in stories that, I ride my bike and I work out and I ski and I do all these things, and they just like sit there and, or I'll ask them first, what does a person with HIV look like? And they, we make a list on the board and they'll, and I'll just like cross all of them off and say, well, none of these apply to me right now, do they? And it really helps because I feel that the more people learn, the more active they can become in the fight against AIDS, the quicker we'll have a cure.
Is this difficult for you? I mean, when you made this decision to do this, I mean, what prompted you to become a speaker?
When I was first diagnosed, I had wanted to do something for a long time. This just, sped it up a little bit. It sped up the process. And I wanted to, first of all, become a speaker because it was my worst fear. I always wanted to overcome public speaking, and I figured if I can live with HIV, I can overcome public speaking. That was no big deal, and I did it. And the first time, it was incredibly nerve-wracking, and then it gets, easier each time. Every now and then, I'll still get nervous, but I just think about, all the other things that I have to deal with, and it becomes real small. It's
but
not
now
that big of a deal.
So far, you're in the Magic Johnson video.
Right. There's both Edward and I are interviewed in this Arsenio Hall Magic Johnson video called Time Out that'll be available mid-September, and that's going to be a big national release in video stores, and my initial response to that was, oh no, now everybody is going to know my status. But I was really worried about my local video store and walking in and actually seeing it up on the monitor, and and walking in to rent a video and seeing my face there and everybody identifying. Right. I didn't really care about the national exposure. It was the local business that scared me.
Well, does your family knows that you're positive?
Right.
And so how has this affected you now? I mean, coming out as a positive person and speaking publicly and going national coverage with the Magic Johnson video, how has that changed things for you?
It's really incredibly fulfilling. I mean, I really feel like I'm making a difference. I gave up a career in the motion picture business, and oftentimes I would get really frustrated in my old job and say, geez, I'm not curing cancer here. And now I feel like I am, in a sense. I'm going out there and doing something where I'm really saving lives and helping people. And you really feel that, when you go out there and people come up and say, I never knew this information before, and I'm really going to think twice about, doing specific activities, or now I know the facts and how to be careful. And it's just, I wouldn't trade that for anything. It's an amazingly gratifying thing to do.
Has this been your experience too?
Oh yeah, definitely. My family, when I first came out to them, were very supportive, except for my father. He had a problem accepting, first he had a problem accepting the fact that I'm a gay male, and secondly, after I told him that I was HIV positive, he was just like, he didn't want anything to do with me and stuff, sort of like, oh, he's the black sheep, let's hide him away somewhere. And now that he knows that I'm doing, I've done the Magic Johnson video, programs like this, and interviews in magazines, and we're also, Glenn and I both are part of a National Speakers Bureau, which is a new program being funded by Borough's Welcome, where we actually go into Borough's Welcome, the drug company.
Actually makes AZT.
Right, right. So they're sending us out into the community, into our workplace groups that we have experience with in the past, such as I have experience with a phone company, so they're sending me out to all the phone companies all over the country to talk about AIDS and stuff like that. But anyway, so with all this media attention or coverage, whatever, my father is just like so embarrassed of me, and he doesn't give me the support that I need, but I get it from everybody else.
Even the Magic Johnson Arsenio Hall video didn't turn him around?
No. So I have, that's the only negative experience I've had with coming out and sharing my story with others. My friends, people I work with, everybody has been very supportive. So.
Would you encourage other people in your position to take up speaking and going public?
It's got to be at the right time for each individual. Some people who just recently found out are dealing with a lot of other issues right now. And until you can feel comfortable in what you've gone through and what you're going through, I don't recommend it for those people. Just for somebody who is really ready, you got to know when the time is right.
You have to be ready. If someone watching this wanted to become a speaker, now you said you didn't even have really previous speaking experience, that you were actually afraid of it. If someone was watching and said, well, I want to do that, what would you tell them? How would they get involved?
Okay. We don't really, like I said before, we like people who have public speaking experience. I mean, they're definitely a plus. But we don't require it as a qualifier to be part of the Speakers Bureau. We, like I said before, we go through an intensive training class where we teach you all the medical aspects and stuff, and then we also give you practice. We videotape your presentations, and if you
thoroughly train everyone.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We're actually going to have to close, but I want to also know, is there any cost to anyone who wants to book a speaker?
No. None at all. It's a service that we offer free to the community.
So absolutely free. If you want to have someone come out to your workplace or to your school and speak on AIDS, you can have someone who in fact is HIV positive, if you wish, speak on it. I encourage you to get in touch with Edward at AIDS Project Los Angeles. And hey, you can even have me come out too. I'm Allison Arngrim. Thanks for watching AIDS Vision.